Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 18th meeting of the Curriculum Committee. I will call the meeting to order and ask if there are any changes. Oh, I do have one change to the agenda. Item number 6, Naviance renewal, we will pull off. There's some questions about the invoice, so we're going to pull that off. So strike item number 6. Other than that, are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve with the amended.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Number 2, minutes for approval. Anyone have any questions, additions, or deletions to the minutes from the March meeting? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Item number 3, Health Science Academy expansion.
Good morning, everyone. I'll kind of take this one. Happy last day before spring break. So, as board members know, for the past 2 years now, we have been operating a Health Sciences Academy model at Monroe Middle School. That academy and program has been very well received by the larger community. It's a phenomenal partnership with Atrium Health and is really engaging our students in real-world, problem-based learning around the health sciences to prepare them for colleges and career in that interest. We have been working as a team this year to really explore possible expansion vertically. And I believe you are provided information about a Health Sciences Academy proposal for Monroe High School, as well as at 2 feeder elementary schools, one Walter Bickett Elementary and the other East Elementary. We have members of the school leadership here today if there are any questions for them. But we're really excited about this. It is modeled very similar to the current middle school program. We have worked with Atrium Health on their commitment to this, and speaking for Mike Lutz, because I know he won't mind, there is 100% support from Atrium Health to do this. We think this is important for 2 reasons. Number one, it does create that vertical alignment K-12 around health sciences. The elementary model is really focused on an integrated biology related science model beginning in kindergarten through 5th grade, of course, aligned to the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. And then the high school model would be a true academy for interested students coming out of Monroe and or other schools, because Monroe High School is a school of choice. We may have individuals from other middle schools that want to apply to get in for the 9th grade, but this would not be a school-wide model at the high school. This would be an academy similar to your other CTE academies beginning in the 9th grade with a direct connection to both South Piedmont and to Wingate University and to Atrium Health. And the goal with this is to eventually, if you can imagine, having our students that come out of Monroe High School's Health Sciences Academy prepared on day 1 for a college or career of their choice in health sciences, and possibly and hopefully with a 2-year associate's degree. So we have commitment on all parts by both Atrium, Wingate, and South Piedmont to create a one-of-a-kind K through 12 health sciences feeder pattern, and we're really, really excited about this. This proposal that we're asking you all to consider to move forward to the full board for approval would not begin until the fall of 2020. We wanted to go ahead and get the approval of the board now so that we have time for about 2 or 3 things. Number 1, to market and let the larger community know what we're doing. Number 2, to recruit students from outside of the attendance zone who may want to come to these schools. And number 3, to really make sure we're doing a quality job of staffing and curriculum alignment. And then that way, in a year, if this committee would like, we could come back with an update. But we want to go ahead and get the approval now. It also does another thing. Our current 7th graders will be at Monroe High School in the fall of 2020. And it would allow them next year to know that if you're interested in continuing this pathway, you're going to have an option to do that. So that is the proposal for health sciences expansion. Atrium Health in principle has agreed to fund a STEM specialist for the high school, much like we have for the middle school, and an additional STEM specialist or liaison that would be shared between Walter Bickett and East. So that continued partnership and support on their behalf will be there as well. So we're happy to take any questions. If you have questions about school-based staff, then we can have our principals address that. But again, this is something that was quite unique for our county, and we're really excited about it.
Well, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge our principals in the audience and thank you for coming in on the last day of school before spring break. Please feel free, once this item is concluded, to get up and get back to your school. I know you're anxious. A couple quick questions. Do we have a feel, or are we polling our current 7th grade cohort at the Monroe Middle to have a feel for what capacity we are going to need at the high school? I want to make sure that we're able to accommodate each student that meets whatever the criteria may be, as well as the interest level to slide into that academy at Monroe. I don't want to have another lottery where we have to turn people away that are students away that have interest. Do we have a feel for that yet?
Mr. Filter, Mr. Ferguson is not here today, but
So I know in talking to Melissa Hines as we were putting this program together that part of what they do in the middle school is survey the students from an interest perspective. I don't have that information available, but I know at the end of this year, they're planning to survey those students to determine what their actual interests are. You know, we've anticipated approximately 100 students, but based on that survey, that number could slide one way or the other.
just based on my discussions with the school-based staff, I can tell you right now, there are not 100% of your current 7th graders that would want to continue this.
Right.
Our guess is probably about half, which would be in that kind of 75 to 80 to not to 100 range. But again, we also want to consider there may be other students across the rest of the school system that may be interested in this. And so we think that we will have capacity. Mr. Kelly is here. Keep in mind also, because of the bond, we're adding classroom spaces to Monroe High School. And so we don't anticipate capacity or seats to be an issue.
You bring up another issue that we've talked about before as far as interest in this academy from outside of the Monroe high attendance zones. Since we, again, have some time before that cohort hits the high school, I want us to revisit again the transportation issue so that any student at UCPS that qualifies and has the desire to attend this academy, we will get you there if you can't get yourself there.
We will do that. And again, I think the benefit of having the board consider this now is to give us that time to do exactly what you just said and to map this out and to market and recruit and see what the interest is.
Okay. And so if I'm understanding this correctly, everywhere from when fully implemented, from kindergarten on up through high school, there will be some relevant curriculum regarding healthcare all through all grade levels.
Correct.
Do any other members of the committee have some questions?
So just for clarity, you are requesting our consideration. Are we considering? We will consider this program.
What I'm requesting from this committee is a motion to take this proposal to the full board as an action item at the May board meeting for approval to open these three academies, 2 elementary, 1 high school in the fall of 2020.
And we do have student interest.
Yes, we do.
So we have surveyed the students.
We've surveyed the current 7th graders pre and post last year. Those survey results for the coming year will be completed in May. We have more qualitative data in terms of testimonials and student feedback as opposed to numbers right now, and we're happy to come back and provide that at a later date.
Yes, Ms. Helms.
Have we also surveyed your parents yet? Because at that age, even through high school, you have to have parental guidance of the classes that at least I have have input on what classes my son took. Have we reached out to the parents as well?
I'll repeat her question for the audience. Her audio's not doing quite well today. She basically wants to know if we have surveyed parents as well as students to judge their interest as well.
I'll turn it over to any of our school building leaders or Mr. Kelly, Mr. Lasher, anyone, if you all want to comment. Have we had a chance to discuss this proposal with your site-based team or with parents or anyone? Why don't you come up to the.
Thank you. Morning.
Make sure you push the button.
Oh, okay. I've been able to talk with our school improvement team and our leadership team and all of our leaders at the school currently about it. We will get out a parent survey kind of on the same timeline in terms of interest, but as Dr. Houlihan said, we're kind of 2 years removed right now, but it would be good to get some parent feedback, obviously, to see what the interest is.
Anyone at the elementary level?
We certainly are interested in making sure that our parents are on board and do plan to have a survey sent out to the families to make sure that they're aware and want to have their children to participate in this opportunity. So yes, that is our intention after spring break.
Questions? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Would you state the motion to approve the
Motion
Health
to
Science Academy expansion?
To send to the full board.
Yes, sir. And we have a second from Ms. Helms. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it will be so reported to the board. Thank you very much. Everyone enjoy your spring break. Number 4, AIG plan.
It is that time of the year when we have the ability to come in and present to you our new AIG plan for the 2019 through 2022 school years. And this year, new to our district is Dr. Cynthia Hogston, and she is our new Federal Programs Director, and she has hit the ground running this year on a number of items. So one of those is the AIG plan. So she's here to present a plan that she's been working on with her team for the last, since the beginning of the school year. So Dr. Hogston, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, Dr. Houlihan, members of the board. I'm sorry. Thank you for allowing me to be here to talk to you just a little bit about the new revised AIG plan. I know that you can't go through that whole document, so I provided it in a notebook so you can look at it at your leisure. But I did want to highlight a few of the areas that the committee just thought were most important for this revision cycle.
Can you remind the board members what was the composition of the committee?
That's okay. The committee was made up of a representative or representatives from all clusters, including teachers, parents, school administrators, a board member, and a member of Wingate University School of Education. So we had representation from across the district and all stakeholders, as well as academic directors from the teaching and learning department. So one of the key areas that we were felt needed some focus was that of our underrepresented population, students at our Title I schools and other situations that may not have been included in the AIG screening due to either pathways or higher achievement score cut scores. So I have these documents, but I want to just go over the executive summary, which is in your packet as well. I have a copy if you just want a copy and not have to look through your book. I had it. That's what happens when you get nervous. But you have it there, the executive summary. It's tabbed. It's tabbed. you see executive summary. Yes. Okay. So basically the definitions at the top. Then this year, the new AIG program standards. This is what the state said we had to make sure we covered. They moved things around from one area to another. Our local plan, we have 6 standards and 45 practices. So in standard 1, which is the identification procedures for AIG, we wanted to make sure they were clear, equitable, and comprehensive, and that they lead toward appropriate educational services for all students in the district. So we clarified our AIG referral process. We clarified the process of identification for each type of identification. So it's just not academically gifted. It may be academically and intellectually gifted. It may be academically gifted in reading or academically gifted in math. So there are 8 of those types of identification. We also clarified the acceleration types of screening for students that may already be in in AIG, but need acceleration to another grade level, different assignments, different work. So we clarified that process. We added an AIG communication plan, which from my understanding, we're the only district that has a communication plan committee and a plan for communication for all stakeholders in their plan. So we have
what a communication plan is.
We have an AIG advisory council made up of members of the community. We also are doing a series of webinars where we record different information about AIG, whether it be how to support AIG students at home, how teachers can support AIG students. And so we do a webinar every month and provide that for anyone who would like to partake in those webinars. So we feel like that we're getting the message out to everyone about AIG and the importance.
I think that is very important because, well, correct me if I'm wrong, could there be instances where students really do qualify for the program, but because parents might be your oldest and you've never been down that road before, you're not really familiar with the resources that are available?
Right. And so we felt it was very important to get the information out, and the best way to do that is through communication. So in standard 2, we added flexible grouping strategies. This is all about the school program and the services available. So we wanted to make sure that a principal had the autonomy to create the flexible grouping if need be, so that we weren't having to say, well, there's only one way that you can do AIG, because we know that that's not best research or best practices based on research. So again, the AIG communication plan is in standard 2. We are beginning a pilot program this year for underrepresented populations called PETS. It's Primary Elementary Thinking Skills, and that will be a program that we will put in place at our Title I schools to help students begin to think critically and to increase their access to critical thinking skills.
How do you identify students for that?
It's all students.
It's all students.
It's all students.
So it's not technically an AIG program.
No. It's a talent development program.
Could you give me an example when you talk about critical thinking? Give me an example of how actually you might see that in the classroom.
So a student, we know that research tells us that aptitude is there, but without experiences, the student may not be able to display their aptitude. So this particular program allows students to put, I'm trying to describe it without going into so much detail that I'll bore you, but basically we have one teacher there'll be 2 teachers in the classroom doing this at the time. The classroom teacher does the observation, and the AIG teacher or AIG certified teacher will provide students with scenarios and and get the students to begin to think about, what does this look like?
Logic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the classroom teacher begins taking observations of how the students react to different situations, because oftentimes the student has the aptitude and is AIG, but doesn't display it in the classroom. Because the teacher is truly teaching and doesn't
Right.
have the opportunity to be an observer. Yeah.
Is this all grade levels?
It's
Will this be-
K3.
K3.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the reason being because we do identification beginning in grade 3.
This is a new thing for us that I'm really thrilled with, and I
interesting.
thank Dr. Hodgson. Another part of this that I've observed is around questioning. You can get to a high level of rigor as a teacher based on the kinds of questions you ask. You know, if you link up your questions towards low level comprehension on think about Bloom's taxonomy compared to high level synthesis, that exposure, and that's another part of critical thinking, that this is really intended to make sure that for our K3 students, they're getting the level of instruction that they deserve to prepare them for identification for AIG in 4th grade.
That's great that it's starting kindergarten.
Right.
You can give them the opportunity.
Absolutely.
So
Now, where's the description of this program in your executive summary?
There's another tab.
Another tab?
It says K3 talent development,
Okay.
and that's the whole program.
Well, let me ask you, you're implementing this in what schools initially?
Right now, Title I schools.
Could I ask why we don't do it system-wide?
It's because it's a pilot right now.
Okay.
It's just beginning. And if it's something that we find that is very valuable, then we could potentially put it in other schools.
If we had the funding to
Right.
hire additional AIG certified teachers.
Because, oh, okay.
Right.
There's the catch. Because if it's Title I, you're able to pull from funds for whatever additional
I did. I made
personnel
sure.
resources you need.
I contacted my
Okay.
folks and made sure that I could do
Okay.
that. Mhm.
How long of a pilot do you anticipate before you have data that would support that it's beneficial? A year, school year?
Probably 2
years?
2 years at
Okay.
at a minimum. Yeah.
Okay.
What I'd like to see, to be honest with you, and 2 years is fine, but I'd like to see your current kindergartners and how they matriculate through
See.
3rd grade.
That's
I mean,
exactly.
that's a longer amount of time, but that's 4 full years to see how much evidence we have that this program is working. So,
And so
as a thought,
that is exactly, because we would take how many we identify this year as opposed to after those kids have come through the program from kindergarten.
And you anticipate starting this next fall?
Absolutely.
Could you, at some point, as you get closer to that, come back to us? And I'd like to hear more specifics of how this actually works
Absolutely. Mhm.
in the classroom. That would be great.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to be interrupting.
No,
you with
no,
questions,
not at
but-
all. Not. So then we move on to standard 3. And this standard discusses the challenging, rigorous, and relevant curriculum. And in this district, we have what is called a replacement curriculum. So our AIG students actually do a different curriculum. And there wasn't a whole lot of changes there. Basically, just clarification around the language. I wanted a plan. My goal was to have a plan that was easy for anybody to pick up and understand what we do in Union County Public Schools. So we did clarify the social emotional needs of gifted learners and evidence-based strategies that are addressed through guidance services, counseling services, and classroom instruction. We have included the we've made sure that students in 9-12 have a differentiated education plan in place for their parents to know that AIG didn't end in 8th grade. You know, because many students in 9 through 12 believe that AIG doesn't exist anymore, and it really does. They didn't stop being AIG. Then in Standard 4, we added AIG professional development framework goals and identified PD options for our AIG student teachers. And moving on to Standard 5, this is that the LEA ensures ongoing meaningful participation of stakeholders in planning and implementation of the local AIG plan. And I've mentioned all of the stakeholders that were a part of the revision committee. And then in Standard 6, this is just monitoring and evaluating the plan. And we just made sure that our plan clarified the data-driven decisions are the basis for what we do. One other thing I'd like to say, I failed to mention that in Standard 3, we did align our AIG curriculum with the empowered curriculum so that we're in alignment.
AIG selection process for, I call it selection or qualification, whatever. Is there a subjective component? In other words, let's say you miss the test, whatever it takes to qualify by a few points, but the teacher goes, or whoever, through whatever process, this student really needs to they need to have that push of being in an AIG program. Is that flexibility in the program?
Yes, actually what we did was, you have this as well, this criteria. It's in the back, it's in the appendix section. And it's the identification criteria. And if you will notice, pathway 3 is the pathway that I talked about that we did the most revision to. And it should be the second page.
Okay.
And pathway 3 has now ors and not ands, which means
Good.
we have taken out, any must-haves. So there are 9 options, and the student must have 3 of those in order, 3 of any combination.
So there's more flexibility built into it rather than hard
Absolutely.
and fast as it used to be.
Absolutely.
I think that's a big point to be noted, because the kid has a bad day and doesn't do good on the test, or what, just too many factors like that.
Yeah, and we live this every day. And as a student, I struggled because I'm not the best test taker. But give me another way to show mastery or show intelligence that's more authentically based. That's kind of what this does. Is it allows to meet kids where they are.
I would have figured you'd be a great test taker.
No, I'm terrible.
You
at
were the
multiple
kid in the
choice.
class that I tried to copy off of. But anyway, on a kind of unrelated topic, then I'm sorry to be hogging things, but is part of her silo the work we did in compliance with House Bill 986? Did that fall on her?
No,
Okay.
that's under Dr. Crawford, and we
Okay.
continue to work on that one, by the
Okay,
way.
well, I'm not
and-
going to ask her about something that's not in her deal. Thank you very much
You're
for the information.
welcome.
It looks like, and I want to thank everybody. Please pass along our thanks for everyone that served on the committee. Is there any other questions? Hearing no other questions, Chair will entertain a motion to recommend approval or send it to the full board for approval.
I make a motion, we send it to the full board.
And I'd like to offer a second. All in favor of recommending approval to the full board, say aye. 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 Ms. Helms, is that an aye? I know we're having a hard time hearing you. Please record her, Ms. Helms, as an aye. Number 5, CTE local plan. Mr. Filter, welcome back.
Good morning again. As part of the process, each year we review CTE, and I know a couple months ago I did an overview of CTE as well, so some of this will be some duplication. So pardon me for that. And the local plan describes the initiatives and things that we're doing with CTE, as well as addressing the strategies and accountability items that are required under the Perkins laws. And just as a note that the legislation has approved a new Perkins 5. And so this upcoming year, 1920, is a transitional year. So they're going to be moving to new accountability measures effective in the 2021 school year. So just as an overview, some of the programs that we're certainly supporting from a CTE perspective, the Health Science Academy at Monroe High School, as we just went over, and the new East Union Middle School initiative that you'll hear about shortly, as well as continue STEM support in the middle schools. We are certainly focusing on robotics and coding and other STEM in the middle schools. And some of that has to do, you'll see in one of our math strategies from an accountability perspective, those middle school students, having that manipulation early on helps them in the Math 1 scores, and that's part of the accountability measure for CTE. We're adding the vet assisting at Cuthbertson High School. We piloted that this year. And then because of the extensive robotics that we have across the county, there's enough students at Porter Ridge High School of interest. So we're going to add a class at Porter Ridge High School for robotics next year. Oh, really? As well as I spoke with Dr. Tyson to add Project Lead the Way engineering at Piedmont High School, and I addressed that again a couple months ago, where we have a program at Weddington, we have a program at Forest Hills, so it sort of spreads that out across the county, gives another opportunity.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Project Lead the Way engineering.
Go back, if you could, over that again briefly, just touch on that.
So it's an engineering curriculum, so students are exposed to the design process and actually going through and manipulating and designing. They work a lot with some of the same parts and mechanical parts that they do with the VEX robotics. They also include like a drafting, it's introduction to engineering design. So they talk about, designing, whether it's a building, whether it's a mechanical device or things like that. So it exposes students to the math and manipulations in that as well. Computer programming is expanding across the county. And so we have more, we'll have more computer programming classes as well as more AP computer science classes.
Could I ask you on the computer program?
Yes.
Is that similar to the curriculum that's offered at CATA that's in such high demand? Is that going to be?
So CATA offers the base, the computer programming, but then they expand to more game and art design. So they do a little bit more of the design concept and the gaming side of that. So software development and game design is what CATA does, but it is very similar to that.
Okay.
It doesn't go next exactly that far from the game design perspective.
I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
How did we choose the programs for each school? Like, how did we choose?
Like the robotics at Porter Ridge High School, I worked, the principal had asked that, and based on student interest, there was enough student interest to add that. And the same thing for the Project Lead the Way at Piedmont. So and both have some sort of engineering focus. So it's a nice addition on that side of the county for, those concepts.
Each year, when we do course registration, we want to make sure that those courses that the district has to offer on all cards that students have access to, so that we know every school and what those interests are, and then can try and build that master schedule from those. It's basically an interest survey when you look at it that way, and we really try and match up schools with the most interests that they have from the students when they fill out that curriculum. And by the way, on Project Lead the Way, I have a son and a daughter, and the number one course that they come home talking about is Project Lead the Way courses. It's just something that students gravitate to, and they just do really cool things in those courses. So.
Well, you bring up a very good point. Even with this expansion to Piedmont, are we still meeting the demand for this class? What
I think you have to consistently look at it, because it's also difficult to implement because it's hard to find those teachers as well. So you have to, roll it out gradually. And I think the robotics class, although not a direct substitute, it allows them at a little bit smaller scale to entertain some of those same principles.
So you said we're implementing at Piedmont. You said where else is
robotics at Porter Ridge, but
right.
Project Lead the Way is currently at Forest Hills, Weddington, and Central Academy.
Okay.
And then we have continued interest across the county in automotive and public safety. And so we do the introductory courses across the county. And then if they have further interest, then they'll go to their academy school to continue that.
Could you touch on automotive technician, besides being offered here at CATA and at Forest Hills?
So based on interest, we have two teachers the last couple of years that have basically floated. So they'll be at Parkwood High School, like first semester, teaching the intro to automotive.
Okay.
And then Sun Valley second semester. And then the same thing, we had one at Porter Ridge and at Piedmont High School. Again, they just teaching the introductory or small engines courses. And then based on student interest, then the students can apply to go to expand their knowledge at Central Academy or now at Forest Hills.
Do we have more demand than capacity here at CATA for those classes? I know it's very capital intensive. You don't just start an sorry if I call it auto shop, but that's what you don't just start those classes. There's a lot of equipment and specialized teachers are not easy to come by. So are we turning students away at CATA?
At this time, no. I mean, there's enough to host what we're doing, but there's not enough to add that. I think the addition at Forest Hills helped that a lot. So.
Okay. Now, if there would be, a student would have an opportunity to go to Forest Hills as long as they can provide their own transportation.
Correct. Or
right?
Central Academy. So because Central Academy, they have the Central Academy cohort as well as additional classes for students that are interested around the county.
Okay. All right. If for any other reasons, because of the other qualifications of getting into CATA, you don't meet those requirements, but still have a strong interest.
Then you can participate in that academy type program.
All right. As long as you can get there.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
I keep coming back to that.
I understand.
You know why. Okay.
I do.
And other questions or please continue.
And we continue to collaborate with South Piedmont Community College. We've just been working with them to update the cybersecurity pathway program. Just added a project, very slight modification. We added a programming and logic class, another community college class to that. And then we're working for them because of the interest in our early childhood program at Forest Hills. We're going to offer that program through the community college, career and college promise program as well through that, as well as all of the other career and college promise pathway courses that students are taking anyway. And then we work with several industry partners and our boards. We participate in the Job Ready Advisory Council that we meet 4 times a year. We definitely get a lot of advice from Union County Chamber of Commerce, and also participate in Workforce Development Task Force and support and these partnerships support our Manufacturing Awareness Week in the fall. Our curriculum and industry alignment, which is a teacher externship program. So we have 5 or 6 teachers this year that are visiting industry to learn more about those concepts so they can bring those back to the classroom. We hope to expand that to more teachers next year. And with the Workforce Development Task Force, we're in the process now of setting up what they have called a Speakers Bureau. And this is designed for middle school. And what was going to happen is we're going to have industry partners come into the middle school during that 6-week rotation. So they're going to visit Porter Ridge and Parkwood next year as a pilot 6 times that year so that they will engage every middle school there, and they'll talk about career and life skills and things that are required. They'll talk about Union County industry. They'll talk about their own programs at their company, as well as then have an engaging activity for those students. And so that way, every student or the majority of the students at those schools will have some life skills from somebody outside coming in. And, you know, after that pilot year, we hope to expand it to future schools. Other initiatives that we do with CTE over and above learning, we're trying to always extend the learning. We have career and technical student organizations that compete on a regular basis. And then we have host internally in Union County robotics challenges twice a year. We have a holiday bake shop. We have a junior chef competition that Parkwood High School chef program placed 3rd in the state here recently. And they are actually going to showcase their skills again in Raleigh next month. We have a film festival for all our digital film classes, and that's coming up in May as well. We have a high school programs expo. We partner with the state utility contractors, and we have some skid steers and some backhoes. And so students, I think it's May 7th, don't quote me on the day, but I think it's May 7th, where students from the different schools, we're going to have a site at Porter Ridge High School, and those students are going to be able to be engaged in working with that equipment. And then we have we have a construction all-star banquet coming up. which is an opportunity for our construction students to showcase their skills. We're going to have industry partners coming in, seeing what they're doing. We already are aware of 2 signings that are going to happen that day where industry's already hired some of those students.
Before you leave that topic,
Okay.
can we talk about construction trades for just a minute?
Absolutely.
Review for me what building, specifically building trades classes are available, or I want to call them academies. I want more than just a classroom, actual work. Back in my old day, they used to go out and build an actual house in the building trades class of the school year. So building trades academies, if you will, could you elaborate on what's offered at what school?
So at Monroe High School, we have masonry, we have electrical trades, we have carpentry, and we have welding. And then at Parkwood High School, we have HVAC. And then with the new Union County College and Career Academy, thank you.
Yeah.
Trying to add that pathway P. I was like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
So we're going to have the construction trades available there as well, and introductory to construction trades there as well.
How about, I don't think I heard electrical or plumbing.
Electrical is at Monroe. Plumbing you did not hear about. We are looking to engage that somewhere because we think that's valuable as well.
Well, having recently paid a bill for some work, I can tell you that it's, are we leaving anything out in other building trades?
No, I think plumbing is the main one that I think we need to look at. The state, and this is probably 6-7 years ago, quit supporting plumbing, which doesn't make a lot of sense based on what you just said and the needs. So you'd have to introduce that as a local course, but that's very possible.
How about something more of a residential construction like roofing, framing,
And
drywalling?
that's all included in the carpentry classes.
Okay, in the carpentry. Great. Well, it sounds like you do have it covered then.
Yeah.
You can just figure out plumbing. Thank you.
Thank you. And then from a career exploration development, we start that in the 6th grade. We have 5 lessons they go through. That begins the students' introduction to Naviance that they utilize. And that flows all the way through high school. We follow them and provide career guidance all the way through. In 6th grade, they do a career key assessment to base their interest to help them along the way. 8th graders do a career profile. And then in the 8th grade, we start that course planner that allows them to sketch out, basically plan their 4-year high school pathway based on what their career interest is. That's reviewed annually just to make sure, because interests change, and make sure that they're still on the path that they want to be. That prepares them for careers and college.
Well, let me ask you along those lines. What if someone wants, I'll take automotive again. And so deciding that pathway would go through CATA, and what happens if you don't qualify to get into CATA? Then you're so you have to have a plan B as well, right?
That is correct. And again,
you're going to find out in the spring of 8th grade whether you got into CATA. So you're going to have to pivot pretty quick. Is that
to some extent? And in your example, what I like about that option, because we're trying to do the intro to automotive across the county as well, as long as there's enough interest at that school. So another area that we have to address is professional development. There's an annual summer CTE conference that we encourage our teachers to participate in, as well as from a new teacher perspective, we have a Canvas course that goes through classroom management, how to deal with different situations from schools and things like that, as well as we have a professional learning community support group for our beginning CTE teachers. And so they meet 4 times a year, again, just to get together and have questions as to how are you handling this. We do the same thing for all of our program areas, where we have a PLC where they can share best practices and discuss and go over common assessments that we have. And if one area or one school is doing very well on those common assessments, they can ask, what are you doing to do that? So to help your scores. And then we have to address skills. And in CTE, we have several classes that are offering credentials, as well as, CTE is very project-based learning, and we try to bring those real-world skills to the classroom. One of the things that I would look to ask in the future and not here is that one of the things that the state does currently is allow for students to, in lieu of the end of course exam, if they obtain some of those credentials, then they would not be required to take that end of course exam. So that's something in the future, but just throwing that out there as an item. And then one of the things we also do in CTE is, again, we have to integrate academic skills, so that we're looking at integrating reading and math into our curriculum, which some of it is already embedded in there. In the new Perkins, we're going to have to integrate science as well into curriculum. So that's something in the new Perkins. And then the strategies for improvement. Again, we're talking about reading and language arts. One of the things that, in speaking at one of the PLC meetings with the teachers the other day, there's a news ELA website where they can locate articles about what their program areas are, and they can define the specific reading level. So that helps some of those students that need different accesses along the way. So we're going to look at implementing that next year, as well as vocabulary.com from the reading perspective. Again, I talked about integrating the math concepts in the middle school, so we'll continue to do that. And then the other address that we needed to address is non-traditional participation. So if you're a female in the automotive, or female in engineering, trying to encourage those students to participate. So one of the things right now is we have a female engineering teacher, so that helps, and we're going to try to bring in industry partners that have those non-traditionals to encourage those students to participate in those programs as well.
Are you saying we don't have any young ladies involved in automotive technology yet? Do you not? Well, I'm not going to ask you about it. You don't know every single student.
So I think there's one or two, don't quote me on that, but there's not many.
Well, I would encourage parents to encourage your ladies who have the aptitude to do that. I mean, it's not the old grease monkey anymore. It's working with computers, fixing these things.
Yes.
Yeah. And robotics and all that kind of stuff. I think that would, for my daughter, I would encourage that as a much a career as anything.
Right. And I think the robotics program in the high school have helped that a lot. In the robotics challenge this last weekend, we had an all girls team that was participating. So yeah, so that was very good. And that's all I have for that.
I just want to say I love the expansion I'm seeing. What are some of the holdups that are limiting you guys on this? So there's some things that just.
I mean, one of the big barriers is, like at Weddington, Marvin, Cuthbertson, you don't really have a shop area there, so it's real difficult. We're teaching the intro to automotive in a classroom. You know, we're doing the best you can, but you know, there's limitations from that perspective. The other thing from an engineering perspective, it's always difficult to find those teachers. Yeah.
Well, when you talk about the physical plant limitations, are certain CTE funding not available for
CTE funding is not available for infrastructure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't it at one time though?
At one time.
Oh, so that trend's passed.
Right. At one time, you could convert funds and utilize them for other purposes. You can no longer do that.
Okay. So you're talking about some capital investment to really take it deeper and
correct
those. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes. Could you go back over for me at Forest Hill specifically, besides the auto technology academy, what else do they have available?
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because by mentioning that, I had forgot to add the carpentry program at Forest Hills High School, because they do have that there.
That's where I was going. I wanted to see if building trades was over
Yes,
there too.
it is there.
So Monroe, Forest Hills,
And Parkwood. Yes.
Excellent.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Helms, Ms. Sturdivant?
I do have a question, and I hope this is not a silly question, but if we do not, I'm nervous about asking the question. I know that Naviance was a part of our original discussion, but if we do not choose to utilize Naviance, do we have something in place to help these students with this
At this point, no.
So we're planning to utilize these programs, but we may not have something in place to help these young ladies decide that the automotive industry may really work for them.
Well, it's my understanding that the Naviance, there is support from the administration that we want to continue using Naviance. There was an issue with the invoice. So from a programmatic standpoint,
right.
we plan to come back to the committee in May for approval for that, to then go to the June board meeting as opposed to the May board meeting. So
Yeah, so it's not that we're not going to be utilizing that. We're planning to continue to use Naviance. Okay. So that's okay. Yes.
Ms. Sturdivant, I'm sorry, I didn't explain why we pulled it off the agenda. There's some questions about the invoicing, the actual documentation. So, yeah, so Dr. Breedlove wanted to do some more research before he brought it back to us. That's why we pulled it. It wasn't a matter of not being interested in continuing. We just need some more information.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Sorry, I didn't tell you. If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion that we recommend approval to the full board on the CTE local plan.
Sound like a motion?
Is that? We'll say that's Ms. Helms making the motion, so we'll look for a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Mr. Filter. I'm sorry, Ag Tech Academy at East Union Middle School.
So in the spirit of kind of continuing to this realm of partnership and innovation, we're pleased to present the curriculum committee a proposal today that we're asking for you to send again to the full board for action and approval for a new STEM academy that we currently doesn't exist, but that we are very excited about at East Union Middle School. This is one that we believe is highly replicable and scalable across other middle schools if interested. This is what we're calling an AT STEM. The AT part stands for agricultural technology. And Ms. Rimmer can go through the details of this, but this is an academy that we would like to begin at East Union next fall for your rising sixth graders. And again, it is modeled after the partnership with Atrium Health. But this time, the partner is Wingate University. And Wingate has approached us to begin working with East Union and eventually into Forest Hills about a 6th through 12th grade STEM-related curriculum that incorporates a number of different courses modeled similar as the structure, just like at Monroe Middle School, where in 6th grade next year, you would begin having elective courses that you can see in the proposal that are focusing on exploring at STEM, space, and artificial intelligence. 7th grade would be around sustainable agriculture, and then 8th grade, similar to the 8th grade program at Monroe, would be all about biotech. At Monroe, the 8th grade elective is health sciences biotech. At East Union, it would be agricultural biotech. This makes a lot of sense to us for a lot of reasons. Number one, because of geographical proximity to Wingate, they're almost across the street. And the university, as a great partner, wants to continue to support what we're doing. They, much like Atrium, will be funding a full-time STEM specialist out of their budget that will be assigned to East Union to begin as the liaison between the university system and the school. The other reason it makes sense is because of number one, a lot of what you're seeing in this proposal, the students at East Union are already doing. This year, we formed a new partnership with the Aldrin Family Foundation, Buzz Aldrin's foundation. And in fact, there was a pretty big event last night at Wingate commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Apollo mission. And Andy Aldrin, who was his son, was here. And we had individuals from NASA yesterday at East Union exposing our 6th grade students to what's called the Mars Mapping Project. And if you were to walk into East Union, is it still there, Mr. Sanders? If you walk in there today, on the stage in the auditorium is a giant map of Mars. And I was there to see it firsthand. And this program, much like the health sciences, it's not about just the content of sciences. It's about experiences and exposing our middle schoolers to different kinds of relevant real world experiences. Dr. Jim Rice, who Casey can mention was from NASA, he was there yesterday and was able to talk to the students about how he actually navigated the rovers on Mars. And so a lot of this is positioned very well between the Aldrin Family Foundation, Wingate University, and all of our other partners in the agricultural sector. That, you know, this is not about farming. This is about the technology associated around agriculture and around STEM concepts, including space. One of the cool things we've talked about is the idea of, you know, the experiences that our children would have is possibly going to the Kennedy Space Center as a field trip to see a rocket launch. So these are the kinds of really innovative exposure types of activities that this program would bring. There is no associated cost from our local budget on this other than your normal personnel issues and staff development that the school will be able to fund. So again, this is one that Mr. Sanders is here, the principal, and he can speak about what they've done locally. Yesterday, I asked a student, and then I'll stop. I asked a girl, a student, I said, are you, she's like, this is really cool. And about the Mars mapping. I said, do you like science? And she said, I don't really like science. I like this kind of science. And that's the kind of what we're trying to get to for all of our students. So, Casey, do you want to go through a little bit more detail from the one pager? And then I do want Mr. Sanders to come and talk about local reaction.
Sure. So to layman, the ag and space connection doesn't necessarily seem like it jives. But once you start digging into it, right, when you're thinking about technology and agriculture, you're thinking about GIS, geospatial information systems, right, that are measuring the land, the satellites that are driving the GPS units that are now driving tractors. So you start thinking about it, right? And the other cool thing about it is that with Mars, thinking about not just space, but Mars specifically, and the Aldrin Family Foundation has really kind of flipped how I think about life on Mars. Life on Mars is like a blank slate, right? When you think about how it's just problems waiting to be solved. And that's really what STEM is solving problems as they associate to science. So when we start talking to our students about how are we going to get to Mars, right? It could take 2.5 years to get there. How do you keep the things alive and sustained on the way there? And then once you get there, we think that we're pretty sure that there's an atmosphere there, but how do you live in that atmosphere? And so now you have to have aquaponic systems, right? Where you have plants feeding animals and animals feeding plants so that you can be sustainable. Your life can be sustained. But those are all problems that are really great conversation starters, and students would be learning the science of space and agriculture through solving some of those problems. So it's really this giant, project-based problem solving opportunity, life on Mars. So not only would it be just science and ag and space, but it also, you could talk about relationships and societies and what would a new society look like, right? That's social studies. You could write about in English or ELA, right? You could write about that. So you could bring this into all of your core content areas as well as your ag tech and your science classes. So some of the experiences and opportunities that we're thinking about, Dr. Houlihan mentioned the Kennedy Space Center visit, right? And our sixth graders, their curriculum does their curriculum does include space in science class, but also going to visit some of these high-tech farms, right? We have a lot in our area. Union County is an agricultural leader in this state. And there's things that those farms are doing that people don't know, right? How cool their irrigation systems are, how they're using robots and drones, and how they're using science to increase the output of their crops and of their animals, right? So going to see some of those things would be really cool. We're excited about the opportunity to capitalize on the very strong robotics program at East Union Middle School and tie that into things like farm bots, right? That go along the grass or go along the field and they plant things and they know where it's planted. So when they water, they don't water in a whole line, right? They just shoot a little bit of water where they know those plants are, right? So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about is robots doing a lot of the work on the farm, but who do we need to do that work, and what skills do we need those students to have to operate those machines? Some of the other things we talked about is expanding a greenhouse and possibly a community garden in that area, right? Using the farm bot and some of the robotics that we just talked about, as well as collaborating with the Monroe Middle School biotechnology classes. We think there's a lot of opportunity there when you talk about biotechnology and thinking about allergen-free foods, right? If someone has a gluten allergen, right? How do you make foods that don't have that so that people can eat those foods? So that could be an example of a collaboration where we could have our medical students, our health science academy students working with our ag tech students to create products.
Mr. Sanders, do you want to comment about kind of the stakeholder input you've gotten on this concept?
Good morning. I had the opportunity to meet a couple weeks ago with my student council. That was the first group I met with. Always good to get their input. I met with our rising 8th graders and our rising 7th graders, and the census from them was that this is something they would like to see. They enjoy agricultural classes very much already. However, we've been very limited with having only one teacher, so they were pressuring me on the spot to go ahead and increase that number right then and there. And I told them about the opportunity that does come with this academy. We've done something over the last 2 years in the form of an Ag Biotech Career Day. So our kids in 6th grade and 7th grade are already familiar with a lot of the careers that are afforded through ag science, as we call it at East Union. So they're very much excited about that. I also had the opportunity to meet with our site-based team, which is comprised of parents and teachers, and was able to give them kind of a overview of what this could possibly look like. And the response was favorable from them as well. The thing that they were really excited about were all the opportunities that are in place in Union County so that their kids don't necessarily have to leave Union County and go far away to get some of those really good paying jobs that they want for their kids. So it was a lot of excitement from those discussions that I've had so far.
In partnership with Wingate University, I'm going to assume if they have interest in this level, they have plenty of courses of study where they would be more than happy to see some of these students further their education at Wingate University. So that opportunity is there to keep on going past high school, correct?
Correct.
So this is going to be a lot more than what I initially envisioned of plowing up and having growing a cornfield.
That is not what we're talking about. Another thing to think about, right now, and I may be wrong about this, the College of Education at Wingate does not offer a certification for ag teachers. And the state of North Carolina last year, don't quote me on this, only produced a handful, Brad said 16 teachers that were certified to teach ag tech or ag. And so they are very much interested in looking at, as you eventually get these students down to Forest Hills, who has a great teacher cadet program. You heard Mr. Filter talking about, early ed. They see a possible connection of adding on that certification to have their College of Ed also producing ag teachers that can stay here in Union County. That's another kind of indirect pathway of this partnership that we've also talked about.
Do you also at some point, I know I'm getting a little ahead of things, but do you also anticipate eventually this matriculating downward to the elementary schools?
I don't know. We definitely see it matriculating up. And in fact, the course sequence you see in 6th, 7th, and 8th already matches the CTE courses offering at Forest Hills. One of the great connections that Casey mentioned on is around actually looking at your construction trades academy classes at Forest Hills, building satellites that might be pioneered on Mars, as an example. So those are kind of some of the innovative concepts we're talking about. So we definitely see it going up eventually. Going down, we'd have to explore what that might look like, but definitely going up.
I'd like to mention one other thing that we have had some really great conversations too with the North Carolina Cooperative Extension that is right up the road from East Union, and they're all in and they are ready to do whatever it is that they're ready to get started. They're very excited about the opportunity.
So you have identified whatever teaching staff you need, whatever capital improvements or acquisitions you need to make this happen fall of next year? I mean, of this year?
So we are in the beginning stages of staffing. I have met with a couple of candidates. They are very few candidates right now for agriculture education, but we have a phenomenal teacher currently at East Union, and we have identified a couple people that we're bringing in to interview. And so it's our hope that we'll have to do some changes with our staffing. But I've already started planning for that through the master schedule and such that once this person comes on board, it'll be a seamless transition with getting our sixth graders. All our sixth graders are on what we call the wheel. So they all get to take agriculture in their sixth grade year.
Okay. So as far as you mentioned, again, I'll reiterate, no capital requirements because we are in the final stages of our budget for next year. So you don't anticipate this thing is going to be self-sustaining from a financial standpoint with contributions from others.
But between the contributions from Wingate, the North Carolina Cooperative Extension, the Share Space is another organization that we're partnering with, and CTE. CTE funding can go to these kinds of any kind of capital requests like drones or robotics or whatever. So we see it very viable and kind of already ready to go.
It is part of Mr. Filter's CTE plan.
Excellent. Any other questions, members of the committee? If not, I will entertain a motion to recommend approval to the full board.
I make a motion that we send that to the full board with great plan.
I will be proud to offer a second. And I want to commend staff at both central office and on the school level for coming forward with a program such as this. This is very exciting. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ms. Helms is recorded as an aye. Thank you. Phonics-based programs for elementary schools.
All right. Last time we talked about just information on what we were looking to do to expand phonics instruction within Union County Public Schools, working with our principals. And this is really the purpose of putting this on for approval, is to take it to the board for action, that we are moving in this direction of piloting phonics instruction with looking at 3 different types of literacy programs. One is our current word study. We have many principals that want to continue on with that word study. But then there are other principals that want to look at more in-depth programming when it comes to phonics. Orton Gillingham is one of the products that we are looking at, as well as Jolly Phonics, in which we currently have schools using that as well.
I'm sorry, what was that again? The last one?
Jolly Phonics.
Okay.
And so at this point, we have embedded in our current plan for our budget $75,000 for next year of looking to pilot this to see what's working and what works best for our students before we take this in future years. And we may come back to the board once we have finished our study after next year and maybe request additional funding if we need training. We identify one product that schools want to come back and say, okay, this is working, this is moving the needle on our K-2 literacy, and which is showing up on grade 3 on our end of grade, beginning of grade exams and accountability. So this is just, once again, moving forward with that pilot study, naming, we're taking input from our principals, our school performance directors are looking at that, and we will identify probably 4 schools, what we want to do, one Title I, one non-Title I that may be using Jolly Phonics. So one Title I Jolly Phonics, one non-Title I Jolly Phonics, one Title I Orton Gillingham, one non-Title I Orton Gillingham, as well as our current UCPS word study, one Title I, one non-Title I, and just compare apples to apples, what's working and what's not for our students. Yes, sir.
Technically, you would have 4 schools using these 2 programs. Everyone else would be doing word study. because you can't not have a phonemic awareness curriculum for all K3 or K2. So,
But like I said, we've identified current funding to do that within our budget, and we just wanted to bring that, even though it's not $100,000 and, we don't need full board approval. We know that this is a big deal for Union County Public Schools, and we want to make sure that everyone is in approval and will be behind the study for our district.
what you can anticipate is a year from now, if not sooner, we would come back to you with the results of this pilot and a possible budget request for the following year to take one, if not both of these, depending on the results, or none. And if we want to continue on our district-wide word study, basically with the results of that and a recommendation for the following school year.
Do you feel that 2 schools to test OG and 2 schools to test Jolly Phonics, do you feel like that's a viable enough sample to provide adequate data?
I think it's a minimal. What I will tell you is there is a lot of interest in this from our schools already. And a lot of our principals have said, even if I'm not picked for the pilot, I may consider funding this out of my own school dollars. And so we may end up having more than 4, but these 4 would be funded by the district. The other ones that want to come on their own, as an example, right now, this year, Union Elementary has been a kind of leading the way with they've already used their EPIC and Restart funds, or not Restart, EPIC funds for PD on Orton Gillingham. Poplin Elementary has been using their local funds for Jolly Phonics. And so we're going to have a little bit more than just 4, but we really won't know the full number until probably another month or so. So Gary, I think what we're looking at is just these 4 funded by the district, but you could have a lot more in the sample size, if that makes sense.
Well, I would be, I can only speak for myself, but I would be very much open to considering if there are funding opportunities to expand this sample for non-Title I schools that don't have or EPIC funds or Restart funds available. I frankly think it's going to take more than, I think out of 30 elementary schools, I'd like to see more of a sample than even 6 or 8 or however, because you're going to have, everybody's using word study right now, correct? That's
yes,
pretty much.
Unless you're
It's
a one-off.
available to everyone.
It's available for everyone.
It's available for everyone. So if you're not using it right now and you're using these 2 alternatives, you're doing it out of your own school funds or Title I or however. And you mentioned Union and Poplin that are looking at these. Do we know if anyone else already is utilizing either Orton Gillingham or Jolly Phonics?
I don't know offhand. I believe the only other one using Orton Gillingham is Hemby Bridge. I want to say they're in their first year. Only in second grade. So you've got some bits and pieces. I'll tell you, I would love to have more than 4. Gary, I think the issue that we have, both of these are incredibly expensive, and we're very limited by our current resources, and we're trying to identify the funding now that we have existing, because you've got to start the training in the summer, and we can't wait till after July 1st. So we're confident that the pilot, as well as any others that choose to come on board using their own funds, we think it'll be a large enough size to really measure the extent that it's having in terms of impact.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The largest elementary schools that we have, you're looking at like Orton Gillingham would cost close to $20,000 probably.
Yeah.
And so that's why we want to make sure that our pool, even though it's slightly smaller, but we're going to get good data out of that.
And you want to know you're going to get your bang for the buck out of that 20,000 or whatever the cost turns out to be per school. All right. If you feel confident we can get in a year's time, well, probably less than a year's time, because if you're going to consider to expansion for next year's budget, you're going to be looking at April or May to start to fund for that. So you're not even going to have a full year to really consider it. Is that right? Because you're kind of working on a tight time frame, it sounds like.
And remember that we're not necessarily looking at the impact of things like test scores on an EOG.
Uh-huh.
We're looking at kindergarten through second grade data, and we think we'll have enough of that data to come back
Okay.
in perhaps as early as March or April. So
Okay. All right. Great. Any other questions?
I'll just note this doesn't require the board's full approval because the services don't surpass 100,000. But if the committee would like to have a motion just to approve the pilot moving forward, that's what we're looking for.
I would like to do that so that we can, and I would like to see this as an agenda item if we could, so that this is more public than on just consent agenda, so that the public can see that we are using every resource possible to continue to improve our reading scores and helping our youngest students progress. That these, we're willing to take a look and test anything. So I will entertain a motion for recommendation to the full board for approval.
I make a motion that we send this to the full board for approval as a full agenda.
Ms. Sturdivant seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ms. Helms, are you still with us? Aye, she is an aye. Great. Next meeting date.
May 30th at 8:30 in the morning.
8:30. Same place.
And we will bring back Naviance at that one. I just want to get that from Hobson, who is the vendor, to clean up provide us a little bit more data than just a couple of line items there.
Did you want to explain about taking the funding to fiscal year?
Yes, and one of the what didn't make it very clear is we are moving most of our program payments to July 1, which is a new fiscal year, and so it does build in those additional months in the next request. So not only are we paying for 1 year, but a few additional months there to get to a July 1 billing cycle.
Because I'm sure you will get the question, why is it more than last year?
Yes, and it's building in additional months. That's good. Good
Okay.
point.
Thank you. Any other business come before the committee? Not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Ms. Sturdivant seconds. All in favor, say aye. 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 Okay. Thank you.